An hour before my son's vows, his bride smiled and called me, "Just the wallet." I didn't argue. I stepped outside, made 3 calls, and by showtime the band, bar, and florist were gone. Everyone learned who controlled the switch. Before watching the video, please tell us in the comments from where you are watching this video. The morning began with quiet hallways and a sky the color of primer. I reached the venue early because early saves money and headaches. Olivia, the planner, walked beside me with a clipboard like armor. "Load in on schedule," she said, tapping columns I'd already memorized. I counted chairs, not for beauty, but for fire code spacing. Crews rolled cases across taped lanes, wheels humming like a decent engine. I nodded at each foreman and asked about break times and overtime. People work better when the client knows names and respects lunch. The ballroom smelled like roses, lacquer, and new promises waiting inspection. I'm a construction estimator, which means I price dreams before gravity answers. Numbers keep me honest when charm tries to bend math. Tyler wanted simple, but nothing about Madison read simple anywhere. I approved deposits under Lawson Estimating because business shields feelings from fallout. Contracts routed through my office for tracking, audits, and single-point control. Olivia knew the rules and liked them for the same reason I did. Paper holds when tempers wobble and rumors run laps. We walked the bar layout, the band riser, and floral pedestals. Everything looked expensive, fragile, and obedient to the signature on file. Tyler found me by the stage, tie draped like a tired ribbon. "You okay, Dad?" he asked, trying to read my shoulders honestly. "Fine," I said, because fathers set weather more than they feel it. He squeezed my arm and said he appreciated everything I'd covered. "You built my whole childhood, then this," he added, voice low. I told him marriage takes maintenance, not a grand opening every weekend. He laughed, nervous and grateful, then asked about the bourbon list. "1 top shelf capped," I said. "Nobody drinks bravery they can't afford." He nodded and jogged off, lighter than he'd arrived. Madison entered with her bridesmaids like a magazine cover in motion. Photographers hovered, clicking brightness into every step she took. She air-kissed Olivia, then scanned the room for flaws and witnesses. "We're moving the head table 6 feet, she announced without checking diagrams. Olivia smiled carefully and reminded her about fire lanes and exits. "Safety before symmetry," she said, in a voice that always lands softly. Madison pouted, then spotted me and tilted her head like evaluation. "There's our patron," she said, sugary and loud enough for microphones. I lifted a hand and kept my mouth where adults store patience. Her parents arrived in coordinated navy, smelling like perfume and entitlement. Mr. Pierce shook my hand and appraised the chandeliers like investments. "Turned out nice," he said, as if he'd signed checks himself. Mrs. Pierce asked Olivia whether the napkins were true ivory or compromise cream. I watched staff measure their answers for people who dislike ordinary gratitude. A florist brushed past with peonies heavy as low clouds. "We're on budget," she whispered to me, remembering our earlier talk. I thanked her by name and handed over the final tip envelope. Vendors deserve dignity before the room decides who matters. In the groom's suite, Tyler paced between garment bags and pep talks. His best man, Shane, cracked jokes like duct tape over nerves. "You ready to be a grown-up?" I asked, smiling to keep him loose. "I've been practicing," he said, adjusting cuffs like calibrating adulthood. I reminded him the vows were promises, not performance art for guests. He nodded, then looked toward the door, hearing Madison's laugh echo. "She's high energy," he said, choosing a polite description carefully. "Energy is great with breaks," I answered, not pushing harder than needed. He hugged me quick and said, "Thanks for everything, really." Olivia caught me near the service entrance with a small frown. "Band wants clarification on the break schedule and last set overtime," she said. I reviewed the clause aloud so everyone nearby heard the boundaries. 2 breaks, 10 minutes. "No overtime without written approval," I recited. The drummer grinned and said that clarity beats generous lies every time. I tipped the tech early because he solved a power hum quietly. Good crews earn their keep long before the dance floor cheers. I kept moving, checking exit lights, aisle widths, and the kitchen's traffic plan. Calm is easier when small things behave under pressure. By 11, the place buzzed like a site pouring concrete on time. The bar stocked, the riser tuned, the flowers drinking from hidden trays. Olivia confirmed timelines with a finger running crisp across boxes. I reviewed the ledger on my phone and saw numbers settle right. No loans, no credit cards, no mystery money arriving late. My signature lived under every vendor's confidence and clocked hours. Tyler texted a heart and, "See you at first look, Dad." I answered with "proud of you," because some messages pay twice. Then I turned toward the bridal suite, still certain the day would hold. The hallway to the suite felt like backstage before a risky show. 2 bridesmaids whispered about angles and hashtags like it was oxygen. I knocked once, and Madison opened the door halfway. Smile set to sponsor. "Rick," she said, sliding syllables like she was testing their worth. "We need to swap the champagne to Dom for photos." I explained the bar cap and offered alternatives that impressed most people. She tilted her head, eyes landing on my shoes, then my watch. "Relax," she said sweetly, voice sharp enough to cut ribbon. "You're just the wallet, but again, let us make it look right." I looked past her at the dress, the flowers, the rented light. Then I felt the switch appear in the simple place where respect ends. Madison's words landed like a nail through silk, quiet, final, and perfectly placed. She didn't flinch after saying it. She just turned toward the mirror, admiring her reflection as if nothing had happened. The room behind her smelled of hairspray, perfume, and new arrogance. I stood there long enough for her to mistake my silence for weakness. "I'm the wallet," I repeated softly, making sure she heard the tone, not the volume. She laughed, not cruelly but carelessly. "Come on, Rick. Don't take it that way. I just mean, this is your contribution. You've been so generous." She said generous the same way people say obsolete. Her bridesmaids tittered, the way people laugh when they want to stay on the winning side. I could have left then, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. "What does your father contribute, Madison?" I asked. Her mascara wand froze midair, then resumed. "Oh, he's giving advice," she said. "He says it's better when parents stay out of logistics. No offense." "None taken," I said. "Advice is free. I've learned that the expensive part is what comes after." She smiled, not realizing it was her turn to listen and mine to remember. Olivia entered holding a clipboard like a peace treaty. She sensed temperature faster than anyone in that building. "Everything all right here?" she asked, her professional voice hiding caution. "Perfect," Madison chirped. "Rick was just checking in on his investment." Olivia's eyes flicked between us. She didn't speak, but her silence backed me like a second opinion. "Good," I said evenly, just making sure the math adds up. Then I nodded once and stepped out. The hallway cooled the back of my neck. I walked toward the loading dock, where the florist's crew arranged leftover stems into buckets. "All good on your end?" I asked the lead, a woman named Teresa. "Perfectly," she said. "Invoices all squared up. You're the calmest client I've had this month." I smiled faintly. "Might not stay that way." At the parking lot, I dialed my friend Scott. "You busy?" I asked. "Depends who's asking," he said, recognizing the tone before the context. "Wedding morning. That bad already?" "Not yet," I said, "but I want to check the contracts I sent you." Papers, not feelings, were my comfort. "Every vendor tied to Lawson Estimating, right?" he confirmed. "Deposits and balances both in your company name." "Correct," I said. "Any clauses on early termination?" "Standard business to business," he replied. "You can close tabs for breach of respect if service environment changes. It's written in your favor." He paused. "You're thinking of pulling something, aren't you?" "Thinking," I said. "Not acting yet." I hung up and walked the perimeter, watching workers laugh and carry on. People still believed the day would unfold like a commercial. I envied them briefly. Olivia caught up near the terrace and asked, "Did she really say that?" "She did," I replied, loud enough for her reflection. Olivia sighed, chewing the inside of her cheek. "You don't deserve that. You've been the only adult in this circus." "Adults pay invoices," I said. "The rest post photos." She hesitated, then added, "If you decide to change anything, give me 10 minutes warning. I'll handle optics." By noon, the ballroom hummed with testing music and last-minute polishing. Guests began arriving, heels tapping like metronomes of money. Tyler paced backstage, smiling too hard. "She's nervous," he said. "Everyone's nervous," I replied, not correcting the pronoun. He adjusted his cufflinks and asked if I'd sit in the front row. "Always," I said, "unless someone forgets what I'm worth." He looked puzzled, but hugged me anyway. At 12:45, I stood near the window, watching clouds build. Madison's laughter echoed from the bridal suite again. Sharp, confident, unbothered. I thought of her words like a memo sent to the wrong department. You're just the wallet. The sentence didn't sting. It organized me. In my line of work, insults are free, but leverage costs money. I realized she'd handed me both without reading the fine print. I returned to my truck and opened the glove box. Inside were copies of every contract, signed and dated, plus my checklist of vendor contacts. No shouting, no scenes, just systems. If I pulled the plug, I could do it in under 15 minutes. The difference between chaos and control was always preparation. My phone buzzed with Olivia's text. Ceremony 2 p.m. sharp. You okay? I replied a perfect, just confirming ownership. Standing there, I thought about all the years it took to teach my son decency, showing up, paying what you owe, treating workers by name. I wondered what kind of example it would set if I let this moment slide. Madison didn't insult my ego. She insulted the principle that built her wedding, and principles don't survive if you keep them only when people are polite. I locked the glove box, shut the door, and stared at the ballroom's white awnings fluttering in wind. Behind them were flowers, lights, champagne, and a woman who thought I existed only to fund her fantasy. She'd soon learn that wallets can close faster than mouths. The parking lot offered quiet that the ballroom couldn't spare today. I stood by my truck and let the wind clear the noise. Insults fade, contracts don't, and that difference steadied my hands. I opened the folder and traced the signature blocks like rails. Every vendor listed Lawson Estimating as client of record. Not me personally. That separation mattered when feelings tried to drive the bus. I noted termination windows, safety riders, and discretion clauses we'd fought to include. No scenes, no speeches, no social media, I reminded myself softly. Leverage works best when it stays invisible until it isn't. I closed the folder and called Scott with a clean voice. Give me the short version, he said, skipping comfort for clarity. Bride called me the wallet, I answered, keeping heat out of it. I'm considering ending discretionary services before we hit public hours. He asked about safety, staff positioning, and any hint of intoxication already. Everyone's sober. Environment is respectful except for one mouth, I said. Good, he replied. Then you're not retaliating. You're controlling risk and optics. I asked which switches carried the least collateral damage if flipped. Bar first, band second, florals third, he said, reading my mind. Cap, release, reclaim. Do it in that order. Understood, I said, and felt the ground come level again. I found Olivia near the terrace, counting plates with a private rhythm. She saw my face and tightened her grip on the clipboard gently. Do I get a heads up, Rick? She asked, already bracing. Yes, I said. We may cap the bar, release the band, and reclaim florals. She exhaled, then nodded like a pilot hearing a routine diversion. Give me 10 minutes for staff briefings and door placement, she said. No confrontations inside. I'll funnel questions to logistics. I told her the reason in one clean sentence without names. A boundary was crossed, and I won't finance contempt. She didn't argue. Professionals respect sentences that wear numbers. I'll protect my crew, she said. You protect your principal? Inside, I checked the room without touching anything precious or fragile. The band warmed scales, oblivious to the math about to arrive. The bartenders polished glassware and joked about playlists and pour counts. Teresa adjusted peonies that looked heavy enough to bruise tables. I asked each team lead about departure routes and elevator timing. They answered with specifics, which is how adults prove readiness. Any questions if we pivot quickly and quietly? I asked them. Just tell us when, Teresa said, tying twine with muscle memory. I thanked them by name, which buys more calm than money sometimes. Calm stretches minutes when drama tries to shrink them. Tyler caught me by the riser with hope pinned to his smile. You good? He asked, reading something different in my posture. I'm drawing lines before they're needed, I said, not scaring him. He nodded, then searched my eyes like a son who trusts the answer. If something changes, will the ceremony still happen? He asked. Yes, I said. Vows are light. The rest is decoration and noise. He put a hand on my shoulder and squeezed once, grateful. I don't need fireworks, he said. I need true. I told him true doesn't mind quiet rooms or cheap chairs. He laughed, then left, lighter than when he arrived. At 1:30, the lobby started receiving guests like a slow tide. Olivia repositioned ushers and gave the DJ a backup ceremony playlist. If the band exits, we transition without an announcement, she said. Copy, the DJ answered, respecting a chain of command that saves nights. I texted Scott, implementing in 15, capping now. He replied, no taunts, no victory laps, only receipts. I walked to the head bartender and pointed at the service line. Top shelf ends at 2 tickets per adult, then beer and wine, I said. Understood, she replied, tapping the POS to lock limits quietly. Limits don't ruin parties. People pretending there aren't any do. Madison's laughter spilled from the suite, bright as a flashing sign. I paused outside long enough to decide against a performance. She wanted witnesses. Leverage prefers a ledger and a quiet hallway. I informed Olivia that step 1 was complete and service was adjusted. Good, she said. Security is soft-posted near back doors and dock. I called the band leader to the side hall where sound didn't bounce. We'll release you after the aisle song and first kiss, I said. Full payment, plus a courtesy hour for tear down and load. He blinked, surprised, then nodded with professional grace. We'll make the ceremony beautiful, he said. Beauty likes boundaries more than people think. Teresa met me by the service elevator with a practiced calm. If you pull florals, what stays? She asked, not offended. Bouquets, boutonnieres, altar pair, and small aisle pieces, I said. Pedestals and premium centerpieces returned to inventory. She weighed reputation against contract terms and found them aligned enough. We'll stage carts near the dock, out of guest traffic, she said. I authorized an extra gratuity to cover the scramble in optics. Paying people well keeps problems from multiplying under strain. Olivia checked her watch and spoke like a steady metronome. You have 4 minutes to breathe, Rick, she said. I finally did. The parking lot felt like a pause button the building couldn't find. Wind ran along the asphalt and carried away the music tests. I stood by my truck and watched clouds slide like slow trains. Calm as a tool. I used it like a wrench on a stuck bolt. I opened the folder again, not because I doubted, but to be exact. Olivia's text confirmed ushers in place and security at soft posts. Scott sent one more line. Do the work. Let paper speak. I dialed the bar manager first because caps changed the night without drama. 2 tickets per adult, then beer and wine only, I repeated. If anyone challenges, send them to Olivia, not your bartenders. She agreed with relief you can hear if you've managed crews. We'll keep smiles, but the system will hold, she said. I thanked her by name, because names steady hands under pressure. Then I called the band leader and stepped into the sliver of shade. We're adjusting scope, I said, keeping my voice level and respectful. Play the aisle song and the first kiss. After that, pack out. Full pay waiting at the dock. He asked if someone had messed up. I told him it wasn't his concern. You'll have a smooth exit route, I added, covering the part that matters. He promised to keep the ceremony beautiful, which is all I needed. Third call went to Teresa at Florals, and she answered on the second ring. We're reclaiming premium pieces after the kiss, I said, crisp and clear. Bouquets stay, altar pair stays, aisle stays until photos finish. She asked about staff count and carts. I gave numbers and times. No centerpieces for dinner? She checked, confirming the optics. Not the premium ones, I said. Guests will still see flowers where vows happen. She didn't flinch, which is why I tipped her team in advance. Copy, she said. We'll roll quiet and leave the room breathing. I ended the call and set the phone face down on the tailgate. Olivia walked out to me, clipboard tucked like a shield at rest. Your 10 minutes are gone, she said, but her smile was kind. Band understands. Bar is locked, florals staged near the elevator. I asked about guest arrival speed and whether anyone smelled trouble. They don't, she said. They only notice mirrors and champagne flutes. We reviewed the order like pilots at the top of descent. Aisle song, kiss, band exits, carts move, DJ fades in, she recited. No announcements, no explanations, no chances for a speech. I thanked her because steady people deserve more than checks. Protect your staff, I said. I'll own every question that tries to find you. Back inside, the building seemed brighter and smaller at once. Tyler's best man was lining the groomsmen like a coach before kickoff. I pulled my son aside and kept my words inside a calm lane. Listen, I said, if something shifts after the kiss, it's still okay. He searched my face and found enough truth to stand on. You're not canceling the wedding, he said, half question, half fear. No, I answered. Vows run on air, not on horns or peonies. He nodded, then touched my shoulder with a boy's old habit. I trust you, he said, and left me enough oxygen to finish well. Trust is weight. I lifted it like a beam I'd measured twice. The bridal suite door was ajar, and I heard the practiced laughter again. I didn't step in, because some rooms only feed the wrong fire. I spoke with the server captain instead and confirmed the water stations. People forgive missing sparkle faster when they aren't thirsty. The DJ met me near the riser, playlist queued and volume low. If the band leaves, I glide under them, he said. Exactly, I answered. No gaps, no jokes, no commentary on the mic. He nodded and showed me the first track. Simple strings, steady tempo. That's the one, I said, because elegance doesn't need witnesses to survive. 2 o'clock approached like a line painted straight across the floor. Olivia lifted her hand, and the processional formed with quiet precision. I took my seat and kept my eyes on the aisle, not the balcony. Tyler's breath evened when he saw Madison at the turn. The music carried them without boasting, which felt right in my chest. I watched the vows land, clean and human, with no price tag attached. When the kiss arrived, the band resolved the chord exactly on time. Then, like a well-drilled crew, they smiled, bowed, and began to exit. The room clapped for love and did not notice the first switch flip. That is what planning buys. The right kind of silence when the plan moves. The ceremony ended under quiet applause and the rustle of dresses. I stayed seated a moment longer while guests swarmed toward champagne that no longer flowed freely. From the outside, it looked smooth. Polite smiles, light chatter, the illusion still holding. From the inside, I saw what they couldn't, a chain of invoices that gave me the steering wheel. The paper trail wasn't glamour. It was armor I had built one contract at a time. I drove home that night, through the kind of sunset you only notice when your anger has cooled into logic. I laid the folder flat on the dining table, the same table where I'd done homework with Tyler years ago, the same table that had carried late-night calculations of square footage and bid margins for my clients. Now it carried the anatomy of a wedding I no longer recognized. Each receipt told its own story of how I'd been slowly written out of my own generosity. It started 6 months earlier, in the same calm voice Madison used when she wanted something expensive to sound reasonable. "Rick, the venue deposit has a strict window," she said over speakerphone. "If we don't secure it now, someone else will take the date." She said we, but the charge went to my card. "Send me the invoice," I told her, already logged into the business account. The paper came later, 4 pages of fine print listing Lawson Estimating as the contracting entity. My habit of protecting myself had kicked in even when my heart wanted to just say yes. From that day forward, I treated the wedding like any other job. Schedule, scope, cost, and control. I itemized every vendor. Bar services billed to the company, floral and decor under the same purchase order. Entertainment subcontracted through a verified supplier I'd used on corporate galas. Each agreement had a termination clause that let the client, me, withdraw if environmental hostility or unprofessional conduct interfered with event execution. Olivia thought it was overkill. "You're acting like you're building a courthouse," she'd said once. "I'm just building a safety net," I'd answered, and yet I didn't expect to need it. I pulled out the florist's agreement first. The signature line at the bottom bore my initials and a small note in the margin. "Retain full ownership of florals until payment clears post-event." It wasn't about flowers, it was about precedent. Next, the entertainment contract. Standard indemnity language, but I'd added a small phrase. "Client may cancel live music at any point without penalty due to behavioral or reputational risk." Scott had suggested that line during drafting. "You never know who'll say something stupid near a microphone," he'd said. The man had more foresight than most ministers. The bar and catering paperwork carried a similar backbone. Payment split 70-30, with the balance released upon event completion, contingent on professional decorum. In the construction world, that clause saves thousands when a subcontractor gets sloppy. In the wedding world, it became the hinge that would let me close the wallet cleanly without a single argument sticking to me. I read through the contracts again, this time slower. The language wasn't vindictive. It was businesslike. Mutual respect appeared 6 times across those pages, in context no one else probably noticed. I'd built the wedding on respect the way you'd pour concrete on rebar, and when Madison mocked me, she didn't just crack manners, she cracked the foundation. My phone buzzed. Scott's name lit the screen. "Everything settled?" he asked. "Executed perfectly," and I said, "No breaches. Vendors handled it with grace." He whistled softly. Then you don't need me to file anything. Just document your timeline and lock it away. Already done, I said. The event ran, the couple married, and the contracts closed. Then let the noise die on its own, he said. People talk. Paper outlasts. He paused before hanging up. Rick, you played it right. Not petty, just precise. I thanked him and hung up. Later that night, I drafted a clean summary memo for my records. All vendor payments complete under Termination Clause 6A. Services ended lawfully. No outstanding debt or pending litigation. It read like every closeout report I'd ever filed, except this one carried my son's name at the top. That part hurt, not because of money lost, but because it proved how far gratitude can drift when comfort replaces effort. By midnight, the house went quiet. The folder sat sealed with a label, wedding, paid and closed. I poured 1 glass of bourbon and toasted the kind of peace that comes when you finally separate generosity from permission. Let them call it overreaction if they needed to save face. I called it bookkeeping. Tomorrow word would reach everyone, the planner, the guests, the bride, but the ledger would speak louder than gossip. Numbers never lie. They only wait for the right moment to balance. Scott answered on the first ring, voice already moving towards solutions. I sat in my truck with the contract folder open like a map. Walk me through what happened after the kiss, he said calmly. I described the band's exit, the floral reclaim, and the bar cap. He asked whether anyone challenged staff or threatened to escalate on site. No threats, no yelling, and Olivia buffered every hot corner, I said. He hummed approval that sounded like a level finding center. Good, he replied. Now we lock optics, confirm payments, and memorialize facts. I breathed, then told him I wanted 0 theater and 0 taunts. He laid out the checklist like a foreman who respects sequence. First, issue written confirmations to vendors describing scope changes and settlement, he said. Second, send the planner a brief timeline for her file. He paused to let me catch up on a yellow pad line. Third, email the venue noting that safety and decorum clauses govern decisions. I asked about wording that kept me inside plain truth, not opinion. Use verbs and timestamps, not adjectives, he said, staying practical. State who did what, when, and under which section number. He added one more line gently. And absolutely no social media posts from you. We talked liability without fog or Latin because I hate both equally. No services were withheld that endangered guests or blocked access, he said. Your contracts allowed discretionary withdrawal for reputational risk and disrespect. I asked whether Madison's comment qualified as reputational risk under the language. Yes, because it targeted the client and created a hostile environment, he replied. He reminded me that hostile, in plain English, means unsafe for professional work. Vendors deserve respect to perform. That's the entire spirit of those clauses. I pictured Teresa's steady hands and the drummer's easy nod. Workers aren't wallpaper. They're the structure holding the room together. Scott moved to communications, where most people crash events after the fact. Who needs a call right now? He asked, keeping cadence brisk. Olivia gets thanks, the florist gets praise, and the band gets affirmation, I said. He approved, then added a warning about the Pierces. If they call, avoid labels like rude, tacky, or entitled, he said. Say only that services concluded under the written agreement. I asked about a family meeting, because Tyler deserved context without drama. Meet him alone first, he advised. 2 chairs, water, and the folder. Keep it 30 minutes and end clean. I wrote 30 minutes twice, because time limits save feelings from wandering. He asked whether I wanted a mutual non-disparagement letter drafted today. Only if they start spinning the story in public, I answered. He said he'd prepare a template with simple terms and short teeth. No threats, just boundaries and a signature line, he promised. I asked if we should invoice for any damages or extra costs. No damages exist because you prepaid and gifted the balance, he said. You don't want their money, you wanted their respect. The sentence landed like a beam I had already measured. Precision wins arguments that never need to happen out loud. I called Olivia from the cab while Scott drafted the skeleton letter. You were flawless, I told her, keeping praise short and specific. She exhaled like someone who finally set a heavy crate down squarely. Your clarity made it easy, she said. No guesswork, no rumors, only steps. I asked if anyone demanded explanations or hunted a microphone afterward. A bridesmaid tried, she said, but staff redirected to the photo area. She confirmed the DJ handled transitions without a single wordy rescue. "This will become a story anyway," she added. "At least ours reads like procedure, not a tantrum. Procedure beats tantrum every day, especially when others start embellishing." Next, I rang Teresa and thanked her team for rolling quiet and clean. "Your crew moved like a museum team after closing," I said sincerely. She laughed and said calm clients are rare and valuable at weddings. "We'll note your account as preferred going forward," she added. I promised future corporate work where peonies never become a scoreboard. The band leader picked up while loading road cases into the van. "No hard feelings," he said. "You paid fair, and the ceremony sounded beautiful." I told him beauty landed because people behave like pros when plans changed. Professionals respect exits that don't turn into shows for board cameras. Scott's email pinged with the draft letter and 3 bullet summaries. The template was lean, courteous, and airtight where it mattered. Parties agree not to disparage or misstate facts related to event services. He attached a 1-page timeline with exact times and clause references. He also included a script for awkward conversations that might ambush Tyler. "Read, don't riff," he wrote in the body, which made me smile. Riffing invites ego. Reading protects facts from adrenaline. I printed 2 copies and slid them into the folder pocket. Paper isn't glamorous, but it never forgets what the room tried to twist. Before hanging up, Scott asked the question good counsel always asks last. "What result do you actually want by tomorrow afternoon?" he said. I kept my answer short because short keeps me honest. "A quiet ceremony in the photos, a respectful talk with my son," I said. "No viral clip, no bar brawl, no unpaid crew." He said that outcome was already built, then wished me sleep. I sat there and watched clouds break into clean blue panels. The day had tried to pull me into performance, and I declined. I chose policy, sequence, and the kind of dignity that doesn't need lights. The ballroom looked perfect to anyone who hadn't read the contracts. Light streamed through the tall windows, catching the crystal and white linen. Guests settled into their seats, unaware that half of what they admired was already on borrowed time. I stood in the back, watching the first ripple of confusion reach the bar. The bartender's smile never faltered as she explained the cap with practiced calm. 2 premium tickets per adult, then wine and beer, she said. Some guests laughed it off, others checked their watches, but nobody caused a scene. Limits, when delivered confidently, feel like structure, not punishment. From across the room, Olivia caught my eye and gave a discreet nod. "Step 1, complete." The air stayed polite, but quieter. A few of Madison's college friends whispered, "Budget cut?" loud enough to test reactions. The waiters ignored them. The band started their next soft instrumental, filling gaps with grace instead of sound. Step 2 hovered on cue, waiting for the downbeat after the kiss. I'd always believed revenge doesn't have to scream, it just has to be undeniable. The ceremony transitioned smoothly from formality to celebration. Tyler beamed like a man finally catching sunlight after a long tunnel. Madison floated through greetings, hugs, and flashes from a dozen phones. Her laughter cut through the room, polished, practiced, unaware. I felt something settle in my chest, not pride or anger, just finality. I watched the bandleader glance toward Olivia for the signal, then nod back at his crew. The guitarist unplugged first. The drummer muted his sticks with a towel. One by one, the music wound down until the room noticed the absence. A DJ's soft playlist picked up seamlessly, like a car changing gears on a quiet street. Most people assumed it was part of the schedule. Madison turned around, mid-photo, and frowned slightly. "Why'd they stop?" she asked Olivia. "We're rotating entertainment per agreement," Olivia answered, voice calm, clipboard ready. "Contract hours reached, but coverage continues." It wasn't a lie. It was the exact sentence printed on the signed documents. Madison shrugged, too distracted by cameras to push further. Step 2, done. While guests moved toward the buffet line, Teresa's floral team slipped into the background. They worked with the efficiency of people who know their craft and their rights. Pedestal arrangements disappeared onto carts that blended with catering racks. The premium centerpieces, the big, expensive ones that Madison's mother insisted upon, left the room in silence. The smaller aisle, florals and bouquets stayed. To an untrained eye, nothing was wrong. To me, it was arithmetic playing out perfectly. Remove the extras, leave the essentials, maintain balance. Step 3, finished. By the time desserts rolled out, half the vendor team was already en route to their next job. The ballroom remained bright, full of chatter and polite laughter, but the excess had been stripped clean. I leaned against the back wall and watched what money couldn't buy. Order. Olivia joined me, her face calm but eyes alive with quiet admiration. "You really did it," she said softly. "No chaos, no shouting, just decisions." "That's all this ever was," I replied. "Decisions." She shook her head. "You'd make a terrifying event manager." "No," I said, smiling faintly, "just an honest one." Half an hour later, the Pierces finally noticed the missing flourishes. Cheryl's voice sharpened first. "Where are the tall florals?" she asked a waiter. The waiter deferred her to Olivia, who met the question with professional calm. "Those were reclaimed per the supplier's terms," she said. "Everything remaining is paid in full." Cheryl blinked, then recovered with a brittle laugh. "That's not possible," she said. "We were guaranteed display through dinner." "Not under my contract," I said, stepping closer. "Ownership remained with the paying party." Mr. Pierce's face tightened, but he knew the meaning of paying party. His silence was better than any confession. Tyler caught the tension midair and hurried over. "Mom, everything okay?" he asked. I smiled to keep him steady. "Perfectly fine," I said. "Just routine business clarifications." Madison walked up behind him, scanning the room, her expression pinched. "Where's the band?" she asked. "Gone," I said evenly. "Their contract ended after the ceremony." She laughed, thinking I was joking. "Seriously?" I met her eyes and repeated, "Gone." The laughter died mid-breath. "You canceled the band?" she said, disbelief climbing her throat. "No," I corrected. "I concluded the services I financed." The word financed landed between us like a door shutting. Tyler looked between us, realizing slowly that something larger was unfolding. "Dad, what's going on?" I turned to him gently. "You married the woman you love, and I paid for exactly that. Nothing more." He opened his mouth, then closed it, understanding faster than she did. "We'll talk later," he said quietly. Madison's voice rose a notch, aiming for control she no longer had. "You can't just cut things off in the middle of my wedding," she snapped. "You're embarrassing us." I looked at her, calm and factual. "No, I'm reminding you who made this possible, and who decided when it stopped." A silence spread like frost, soft but unstoppable. Guests shifted, pretending to check phones or napkins. Cheryl reached for Madison's arm, whispering something too low to hear. Mr. Pierce avoided my eyes entirely. Olivia, ever professional, stepped between us and announced, "Dinner is served." The room obeyed the cue gratefully, returning to normal volume. I walked out to the terrace, leaving the hum of polite chaos behind. The cool air met me like clean truth. Scott texted one line. "Switches flipped?" I replied. "All three," quietly. I leaned on the railing, listening to laughter that didn't touch me anymore. Revenge didn't feel hot or bright, it felt balanced. Numbers balanced, respect restored, and dignity intact. Behind me, they could toast under smaller flowers and softer music, pretending nothing had changed. But the record would show every service concluded exactly on time, exactly as paid. The wedding still happened. The lesson happened louder. The room adjusted the way eyes adjust when bright lights fade. Phones went down, and people started talking like humans again. The DJ's strings carried conversation without drowning it in noise. Waiters moved in smooth lanes, pouring wine like a reassuring metronome. Tyler's shoulders loosened, and he finally stopped scanning for approval. He thanked the officiant twice and hugged his grandmother without posing. Olivia watched traffic flow the way pilots watch crosswinds. She redirected a few guests and kept the aisles clear without drama. Teresa's smaller florals looked intentional instead of leftover. You could feel the budget get honest and the mood follow. Madison tried to stage a second grand entrance, but the door resisted. The moment didn't swallow the room the way she expected. She waved the photographer closer and asked for a slow pan. He shrugged and switched to candid frames near the windows. "We still look great," she told a bridesmaid, chasing momentum. The bridesmaid nodded, then checked the bar and saw the limit again. "It's fine," Madison said, but her voice thinned around the edges. Cheryl approached Olivia, rehearsing a complaint that never quite found legs. Olivia replied with times and clauses instead of apologies. People calm down faster when sentences carry numbers, not adjectives. A groomsman tried a joke about austere chic, then met my face. "Eat, kid," I said, not unkind, just finished with theater. He grinned sheepishly and grabbed a plate like a man rescued. At our table, Tyler sat beside me for the first real minute. "Did you mean to save me from the noise?" he asked quietly. I meant to save the meaning from the noise, I answered. He nodded and watched guests settle into smaller conversations. This feels more like us, he said, honest and relieved. Then keep it, I told him. Noise is rented. Calm is owned. He breathed, then stood to greet another aunt without forcing a grin. The toast arrived as words instead of performances, which helped everyone. Shane kept his short and dry. A story, a thank you, a clink. He looked at Madison once and at Tyler twice, which mattered. Madison lifted the mic, and I paused and put it down slowly. I'll pass, she said, measuring the room's appetite and her own. Instead, she walked to Daniel's grandmother and knelt to listen. I watched the old woman touch lace and talk about long marriages. Take care of the boring parts, she said into Madison's ear. That's where love lives most days. Madison nodded, and for once didn't search for a camera. Cheryl found me near the terrace and tried her careful voice. You made your point, she said, not raising volume or perfume. I enforced the contract I paid to draft, I replied. She accepted the phrasing like a pill that works but tastes bitter. We'll settle our side with Madison later, she said, glancing away. Mr. Pierce joined, hands in pockets, jaw already unclenching. No debts owed, I told him before he offered what wouldn't help. Only respect due, and it starts now, not at dessert. He nodded once, which was the most honest thing he did all day. We stepped apart without shaking hands and without more damage. Olivia cued the first dance without the band's showmanship, and it worked. The DJ kept it spare, and the floor felt bigger for it. Tyler and Madison moved like two people finally alone in public. No fog, no spotlight, just the sound of fabric and shoes. Guests circled at a respectful distance instead of shouting requests. When the song ended, there wasn't a roar, only warm clapping. Madison leaned toward Tyler and said something I couldn't hear. He answered with a quiet yes that looked like a promise. They hugged family in small groups instead of forming a receiving line. The night settled into the kind you remember, not the kind you post. At coffee service, the murmur changed color again, softer and kinder. People compared long drives, school schedules, and mower problems. The florist's carts were gone, and so was the need to pose. A cousin apologized for a remark earlier and meant it plainly. The bartender laughed with a guest about ticket math and fairness. I thanked the staff one by one, using names I'd learned. You kept everyone safe, I told Olivia, because that's the whole job. She smiled like a pilot after a clean landing in crosswind. You kept everyone honest, she said, and neither of us argued. Ceremony without a net worked because the net was never the point. The room adjusted around the missing luxuries like a body around a splint. People noticed the softer soundtrack and the humbler flowers, then adapted. A cousin whispered budget cut, and a waiter answered with a steady shrug. Everything remaining is paid in full, he said, keeping it respectful. Two groomsmen joked about DIY chic until Olivia drifted near their elbows. Logistics change, meaning doesn't, she said, moving them along gently. The bartender repeated the ticket rule without apology and kept lines moving. Guests started talking about mortgages, kids, and yard work between small laughs. The party looked less like a commercial and more like a reunion. Cheryl approached the head table with an expression she used for returns. We'll discuss reimbursements for the band, she told Olivia firmly. Olivia's answer came measured and neat, like a printed invoice. There is no reimbursement, she said. The client concluded services under Psi contract. Mr. Pierce frowned and asked who exactly the client was today. Lawson Estimating, Olivia replied, eyes steady, voice level as a plumb line. He glanced toward me, then away as math replaced mood in his head. So he held every signature? He asked, already knowing yes. Olivia nodded once and excused herself to protect the traffic flow. People nearby heard enough to understand where the switches lived. Megan, a bridesmaid with a sharp tongue, tried to restart the old script. It's giving petty, she announced, testing the room for fresh followers. Teresa, packing a last cart, answered without looking up from her work. It's giving paid, she said, tying twine with practiced, patient hands. A groomsman smirked, then saw Tyler hugging his grandmother at the window. Looks happier now, he muttered, scratching the back of his neck thoughtfully. Megan searched faces and found fewer nods than before, which slowed her. It's still weird, she tried. Softer, measuring her own footing. Weird is cheaper than rude, someone said, and conversation drifted away. Rooms learn quickly when numbers start grading tone. I stepped beside the DJ and thanked him for Invisible Pilot's work. You kept people moving without asking for applause, I told him calmly. That's the job, he said, tapping a fader with a gentle finger. Quiet lands better when pride has ears, he added, grinning a little. Olivia joined us, reading the dance floor like a clean blueprint. Your son is breathing normally, she said, pleased by ordinary stability. He's choosing small conversations instead of staging a showcase. I nodded and let the line settle where relief lives. He needed true more than grand, I said, watching him laugh softly. Grand eats budgets. True feeds marriages on regular Tuesdays and Thursdays. Madison circled back with a smile that finally looked human again. The photos still work, she said, testing truth without armor or glitter. They work because people are in them, not props, I answered. She looked at the smaller florals and let her shoulders relax a notch. I wanted perfect, she admitted, voice lower than earlier spotlight volume. Perfect is expensive and hungry, I said. Good is sturdy and paid. She exhaled, then nodded, accepting a sentence that didn't flatter. I was careless, she said. You were clear. I was protective, I corrected, keeping my tone even and small. Rooms do better when words carry weight, not sparkles. At coffee, curiosity finally asked for receipts without saying the word receipts. An uncle leaned near me and spoke like a man comparing fence quotes. Did you cut things midstream? He asked, keeping it respectful and low. I ended discretionary extras I financed, I said, steady and simple. Vows stayed, noise left. He considered, then chuckled like a man recognizing a fair bid. You paid for meaning. You trimmed menu, he summarized, satisfied. Exactly, I said, and we both returned to our cups. Near the dessert table, Cheryl's laugh lost 2 inches of height. Numbers were teaching the room faster than adjectives ever could. Tyler sat beside me again as plates turned into quick stories. I'm not angry, he said quietly, eyes honest and unguarded. I'm embarrassed I didn't hear it sooner. I kept my answer short so he could keep breathing. Hearing late still counts, I said. You heard. He looked toward Madison, who was listening closely to his grandmother. We'll talk after everyone leaves, he said, choosing the right order. 30 minutes, just us, I answered, and he nodded gratefully. Thanks for protecting the day from the show, he added softly. Thanks for choosing vows over volume, I said, meaning every inch. By the time cake plates cleared, the room's math had finished. Guests understood that generosity loans end when respect defaults loudly. The DJ closed with a song that didn't beg for anyone's attention. People hugged in 2s and 3s, not crowds, then found their coats. Olivia shook my hand like 2 contractors splitting a clean project. We landed, she said, satisfied, already thinking about staff rides home. Wheels down, I agreed, and we both laughed at the same picture. Tyler squeezed my shoulder and asked for that quiet room again. The wedding was over. The reckoning wanted a chair and water. Tyler found me in a side lounge that smelled like polish and old wood. The hallway outside had emptied to a hush that felt earned. He closed the door carefully, then sat across from me without armor. His tie was loosened, his shoulders plain, his eyes finally quiet. Thank you for not blowing it up, he said, voice steady. I set a bottle of water between us and kept mine closed. I didn't save the night, I said. I just removed the noise. He nodded and let that settle, because truth needs breathing room. I heard what she said, he added, words harder now. Not the first time she's chased an audience. We kept our hands on our knees like 2 men building a step. Tell me what you actually need, I said, skipping speeches. He thought, then answered like a man reading his own notes. I need you to know I chose her for who she can be. I nodded because growth is a plan, not a guarantee. I need boundaries that keep us from this again, he continued, and I need to fix what you carried without keeping a tab. I took a breath and kept my tone level and warm. You don't owe me a refund, I said. You owe me respect, he nodded, slower this time like he meant the word. We moved to the ledger that isn't money and matters more. Here's my list, I said, holding the air like a clipboard. No public digs at family, ever, he agreed before I finished the line. Direct calls to me when pressure builds, not texts. Through a crowd. He repeated it back so his mouth would remember. No revisions of history at brunch, online, or in photos, I added. He exhaled and said, We'll make silence our default. I kept going because structure protects love when weather shifts. Budget your life as a couple without assuming I'm the solution. He nodded and said, We'll pay our own extras, even when it's ugly. He rubbed the bridge of his nose and finally asked the harder thing. What about Madison? He said, eyes honest and not defensive. She was careless, and I didn't stop it fast enough. I chose small words because small carries farther. Respect is the ticket to this family, I said. No ticket, no entry. He swallowed and did not argue with the sign on the door. She apologized to Grandma, he offered, testing ground. Good, I said. Now she apologizes to you and to me, with no microphones. He nodded once, then twice, then looked down at his hands. I'll steer that, he said, the way a grown man claims a wheel. He leaned forward, voice lower, the way you talk when pride is done. Did I embarrass you by not stepping in sooner? He asked. I chose mercy without lying. You disappointed me for a minute, I said. Then you found the line. He breathed out like someone setting a heavy box down. I want to earn your trust back with dull, steady proof, he said. Dull is my favorite kind of proof, I answered, and we both smiled. We sat in that quiet and let the room be simple wood again. You taught me to pay what I owe, he said, tapping his chest. Tonight, I owe you listening. Madison knocked softly and waited instead of walking in fast. Tyler looked at me. I nodded. He opened the door. She stepped inside with no camera smile and stood, not performing. I was cruel, she said before either of us could help her. I tried to spend your generosity and your dignity at the same time. I didn't rescue her from the sentence because growth hates cushions. I accept your apology, I said, but it comes with work. She nodded, eyes clear, voice smaller but not weak. Name it, she said, and the room felt like a class that mattered. I kept the list tight because tight lists actually get done. Thank Olivia in writing, thank the florist, thank the band, I said. Pay attention to workers and use names, not titles. She repeated each line like a student who wants the grade. No more jokes about my father to buy friends, Tyler added. If you need to vent, you come to me. She took his hand, which mattered more than the words. We'll build our life small, then better, then bigger if earned, she said. I rose because the meeting was built and didn't need more lumber. 30 minutes, I said, glancing at my watch. We're done. We stood, and the silence felt like a floor finally level. Tyler hugged me once, strong, not staged, and stepped back. Thank you for closing the wallet before it closed you, he said. I smiled because the line fit the night perfectly. Thank you for hearing late rather than never, I answered. Madison reached out her hand like a person applying for entry. I shook it because grace is policy when respect shows up. We'll see you tomorrow, Tyler said. No speeches, just coffee and plans. I opened the door and let the building breathe again. We had chosen vows over volume. The rest would be work, not theater. Morning brought the kind of quiet that tells you the job is done. I brewed coffee, opened the folder, and read the timeline one last time. Every box showed what mattered. Paid, concluded, returned, documented. I emailed Olivia a thank you with the exact times attached. Your team kept people safe, I wrote, which is the only review professionals need. Teresa replied with a photo of her crew eating sandwiches in the van, tired and smiling. The bandleader sent a single line, clean exit, clean pay, anytime again. Scott texted, no chatter online, hold the line. I closed the folder and labeled it the way I label finished work, paid in full. The words didn't gloat, they just sat where truth belongs. Tyler arrived before lunch with a hardware store bag and a nervous grin. I brought stain for your porch rail, he said, like a man who knows how repair begins. We worked side by side without filling the air with post-game talk. After the second coat, he spoke like someone stepping onto a firm plank. I called Olivia and thanked her, he said, and I sent notes to the band and the florist. I nodded because thanks count most when they land in the right inbox. Madison wrote her letters too, he added, looking at the wet rail. No hashtags, no captions. I asked about their budget, and he answered with numbers, not wishes. We can afford small, he said. Small is steady. That afternoon, the Pierces called and tried a different tone. Mr. Pierce cleared his throat and said, we'd like to reimburse the album upgrade. I kept my voice calm and factual. No reimbursement needed, I answered. What I wanted was respect, and the day ended respectful. Cheryl asked for a meeting to clear the air, and I drew a line. Happy to meet if it's about future boundaries, I said, not about relitigating signed agreements. She paused, then said, understood, and for once the word sounded honest. I sent Scott a note that the calls remained polite and contained. He replied, good. Paper wins when voices don't chase microphones. We let silence finish what caution started. Madison came by with Tyler the next morning, hair pulled back, phone away. She stood on the porch and looked at the rail like it was a test. "I shouldn't have said what I said," she began, steady and plain. "I treated your money like air and your name like a prop. I didn't make it easy or cruel. I kept it clear. Money is never air," I said, "and names are not props." She nodded and lifted a small envelope. "We can't pay you back for the wedding," she said, "but here's our first month toward our own life. Rent, utilities, no calls to you." I took the envelope and didn't open it. "I'm not asking for refunds," I said. "I'm asking for adulthood." She said, "That's what this is." We built a new routine in small boring pieces that actually hold. Sunday dinner became quiet on purpose, paper plates sometimes, real plates when we felt fancy. Tyler fixed the porch light and the sticky gate without posting either job. Madison learned names at the diner and tipped like a person who understands shifts. When she forgot, she drove back to make it right without a lecture from me. "You were right about small," she told me, wiping a counter clean. "It leaves less room for pretending." We talked calendars and holidays like adults who know time costs money. "Thanksgiving here," I said. "No themes, no speeches." She laughed once, soft and relieved. "Just chairs and names," she repeated, and that was enough. By the end of the month, the story other people told had shrunk to fit reality. No viral clip, no scandal, just a wedding that finished with fewer props and more meaning. Olivia sent her final invoice marked zero balance and attached a staff roster. I mailed hand-signed thank you cards with checks for anyone who went above their job. Scott archived the non-disparagement draft we never needed. Tyler texted photos of their budget board with the caption, "Paid on time." Madison forwarded a note from the florist, "Kindness received, door always open." I looked at the folder one more time, then slid it onto the shelf beside other finished jobs. Not revenge, not spectacle, just a standard closeout done correctly. On their 1-month mark, Tyler and Madison invited me for chili that didn't try to be a restaurant. We ate, talked about weather and tires, then washed dishes without ceremony. Before I left, Tyler put his hand on my shoulder. "You taught me that money pays for things, but respect pays for people," he said. Madison added, "and that budgets and boundaries are love in plain clothes." I locked the lesson where lessons last, not in speeches, but in habits. Driving home, I watched the street lamps light in order down the block. Everything looked level and simple, like a plan that finally met itself. The wallet was closed, the door was open, and the roof would hold. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like the video and tell me what you think in the comments. And of course, subscribe for more stories like this one.